When someone dies, I'm sure you've all been to funerals before, a lot of times people will, try that again. When my mom died, people came to me at the funeral and were saying, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Does everything happen for a reason? Maybe. What was the reason that my mother died of a heart attack? She smoked and wasn't able to exercise. She had a severe injury in her back. She could barely walk. So over time, that takes its toll. It caused a heart attack, and she died. Plus, heart attacks apparently run in my mom's side of the family. But maybe that's because nobody on my mom's side of the family runs. But we'll say this kind of thing all the time, as though just saying things happen for a reason and being left to wonder why is enough. But is there any really good reason that's satisfying enough? Like when we ask that question, why did your mom die? Because she smoked and didn't exercise. So now I have an answer. Now I know the why, but that doesn't give me any kind of satisfaction of it. And like I was saying, yes.
I'll just let you finish.
All right.
I was gonna say, like, because you keep saying like there's not really any satisfying answer, but like there is. Like if you just realize that like okay, like maybe she died from that, and like you don't want to go down that path, so like don't do what she did, or like if you ask yourself why, like if you think about it as a lesson or like as an experience, like that'll give you the satisfying answer,
Mm-hmm. But that would be kind of doing actually what he talks about. This is what Aurelius talks about. Maybe you can't control the circumstances in which you find yourself, but you can control how you respond to them. So in other words, there isn't a thing where I can sit there and hear about how my mom died and go, well, I feel better about that. That's satisfying, But I can look at it and go, well, how can I make this useful in some way? So for that, absolutely. And we should kind of seek to do that with every misfortune in our life. That way there's some kind of a reason. I shouldn't say reason. That way there's something that we can actually get out of it. Because if you get nothing out of it, there can never be satisfaction, there can never be purpose, there can never be meaning, and there can never be growth. It's just all negative. We hear it all the time, especially when we're little kids, I'm sure we hear all the time, to make lemonade out of lemons. And it's a cliche, but man, it's true. It's kind of at the heart of Stoicism. I've talked a bit about Stoicism, I think. But essentially, Stoicism is this idea that you can't control circumstances, you can't control a lot of things of your life, but you can control how you respond to them. The things that you can't control in your life, you need to not focus on those things. People will say things like, you just have to let it go. Well, what does that even mean? The way that you let things go is, to the best of your ability, is to just simply not focus on them. Every time your mind turns towards the thing you can't control, redirect it towards the thing that you can control. And then that way you can at least make the best of any situation. Again, my mom died. I can sit there and dwell on it and all that, but I can't really do anything about it. All I can do is keep going over and over and over in my head. I think that I may have mentioned before, when she died, I was actually supposed to be with her at that moment. But something came up, and I was talking to one of my friends, one of my old professors. I went to go visit him. Instead, my mom was with my dad, and she had a heart attack. My dad doesn't know CPR. I do know CPR. If I had been there, there's a good chance I may have been able to keep my mom alive long enough for the medics, because they just missed her by like a minute or two. If they had gotten there a minute or two earlier, or if she had had oxygen flowing in her brain for another minute or two, she may have recovered from it. I broke off plans with her to be someplace else. If I had been there, she may have survived. Who knows? Now, can I go back in time and make that happen? No. So I can't sit there and focus on that constantly. First off, is it really what she would have wanted? I hope not, because that would be an incredibly selfish thing, right? Think about how I died. It's your fault. I can't imagine that she would have wanted that. And so all that I can do is figure out how I can possibly grow from something like that. There are things in your life, there are misfortunes in your life that are misfortunes, as long as you allow them to remain misfortunes. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen to bad people. Good things happen to good people. We can go crazy trying to figure out why. It's kind of like almost trying to figure out the different courses that your life could have taken. Imagine if you didn't come to school today. What could your life have been like today? Who knows? You can speculate. You know, what happens if you had bought a lottery ticket on the way here? You might think, oh man, I could have won $100 million, or you could have wasted $1. Who knows? Every single minute of your life, literally every single minute of your life, is a new set of decisions that we don't necessarily internalize in this way, but I promise you, this is the case. Each of those minutes could take your life in a completely different direction. Even if you're sitting there and you decide to stand up at 1 second, stretch your legs, and sit back down, something happened within your body. There's some change inside of your body, as small as it might be, and what impact that's going to have, a year from now, you can't possibly imagine. You can go crazy trying to figure those things out. Or you can sit there, look at your life and say, my life is what it is right now. I stood up, for a minute, and so I got the results of that. But of course, that's tedious. I was born into a certain situation. I was born into a certain family. I was born into a certain neighborhood. I was born with certain characteristics. I was born with a certain IQ. All of these things are things that you simply cannot control. And so you can go crazy sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had been born into a rich family. My life would be so different. True. It's true. What are you going to do? Dwell on that? Because every minute that you're dwelling on that, you're not investing in becoming what you want to be. Because when we say things like that, like, I wish I'd been born into a different family, I wish I'd been born wealthy, what we're really saying is, I wish my life looked different from the way that it looks right now. And every minute that you focus on what you wish your life was like, you're not investing in creating the life that you want it to be. The problem is it's hard to think of it this way, because it's like, so for every minute I do that, yeah, it's only a minute. Yeah, the first time. And the second time it's 2 minutes. And then the third time, the third time is 3 minutes. And so on and so on and so on. You can really sit there and think about how much time you've put into wishing things were different versus how much time we've actually put into making things different. And as soon as you can internalize the idea that you genuinely can make things better, because if you believe you can't make things better, well, then it makes sense to just sit there and just like kick the dirt once in a while and go, man, I wish life was different, It's kind of like somebody who's an alcoholic who wishes that they didn't drink. Like, well, do you think there's a genie at the bottom of that bottle? Your wishes aren't going to make that happen. There has to be something else that goes into play. And this isn't a way of like chastising and saying, stop complaining. Remember, when Marcus Aurelius writes this, he wrote a book called Meditations. And you should all read it. You really should. You're all going to read some of it this year. If you do the class reading, you'll read some of it this year, because we're going to look at it. But Meditations, it's not a book per se, really. It's his journal. It's his journal. He was writing to himself, reminding himself about how he should be behaving. It wasn't designed to say, listen, you guys, I was the emperor of Rome, and I'm going to tell you all how to live. How easy would it be for him to tell you how you should all live? That's easy. He can sit there and say, you must all be honest and virtuous. You must never steal. Why would that be easy for him to say? Because he was the emperor. If he wanted food, he just snapped his finger and food appeared. Anything he would have wanted in life, he could have just snapped his fingers and gotten a hold of. So it would be easy for him to preach to the rest of us. But he also understood the philosophy of Stoicism, which says you have to let go of the things that you can't control, which means not to focus on them. Redirect your mind and your energies towards the things that you can control. Because there are some things in your life that you can control. Take radical control over those things. And for the most part, those things are how you respond to a situation. Something terrible happens in your life. Is it terrible? Yeah. How can you make it less terrible? By learning from it, by growing from it, by developing from it. That way, whatever it is, it wasn't a waste and it wasn't completely destructive. It was valuable, at least in some way. Like when Nietzsche says, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, it isn't just a matter that he gets hit and gets back up. It's that he gets hit and he learns next time, slip the punch. This is what a lot of life is. It's learning how to slip the punch. so that you're not there next time when the strike comes. If you get punched every time and you refuse to learn from it, well then yeah, it makes sense to think that life sucks and everything's against us. I don't mean that in the persecuted sense. I just mean that in the sense of the odds are so much against me because the world is so big. You know, of course, in those circumstances, it's difficult to motivate ourselves to get up and keep going. But instead, if we understand that we really can grow from it, that we really do have power over directing our own lives, and if that's true, we have a lot of responsibility, therefore, to direct our lives. Well, then, sky's the limit, really. And it's also discouraging because then that means that there's responsibility that's there. You know? But when Aurelius writes this, he's writing to himself. That's the important thing to keep in mind about the meditations. He's not preaching to anybody except for himself. He's writing these things to remind himself. Because when we say something, it's different from writing it down. When we write things down, we really start to learn, you know, what we really think. One of my former students actually reached out to me earlier this week. I'm sorry, end of last week. She sent me actually a voice message, and she just said that she was going through old stuff, and she found her journal from back then. And she was reading it, and she's like, it's pretty amazing to think about what, 18-year-old me thought versus how she is right now. There's an interesting thing there where I get this actually frequently from students. They'll look back at what they were saying about the world when they were that age, and they don't find themselves entirely naive. Like we think like, oh my God, I thought, some silly things back then. That's true. But what she also found was incredibly motivating things to herself as well. Because she realized that whatever she is now, 24-year-old her, would get a stern talking to by 18-year-old her because things had happened in her life. She had forgotten those ideals and those values that she had back then. By listening to her younger self, she realized, wow, that's who I was, and that's who I could be again. So it gives her an opportunity to refocus herself. This is one of the values in these things, is that we're writing to ourselves. It's my sincere hope that you guys will hang on to these, and that you'll look back on them in the years to come. Also, like I said before, it'll be great if you ever have children someday. Before you yell at your children for not doing their work in school and not being a perfect A student, it might be a good idea to revisit your journal from now. If you did the whole assignment and everything's great, you can always say, look, I was this student, this is who you can be. Or you can look at it and be a little more understanding of the things that they might be going through. To remind yourself that when you were their age, you were going through some things. That as insignificant as 35 or 40-year-old you might think that they were incredibly significant to 18-year-old you. And they're going to be incredibly significant to them as well. And maybe be a bit more understanding of it. So it's a good thing to write to ourselves. And so Aurelius writes to himself in the Meditations. So when he says this, he's reminding himself about this. He's not preaching to us, quit complaining. He's reminding himself, quit complaining. Is your cucumber bitter? Well, then throw it away. But then I'm not going to have anything to eat. Well, make a decision. Which one's more important to you? To have something to eat or to not eat something bitter? Because those are the two choices. You can't control that, but you can control how you respond to it. Fine, I'll eat the cucumber. Okay, but then when you do it, you've chosen it. So quit complaining about the choice you've made. Are there briars in your path? Are there thorns in your path? Why are you going right through them and tearing you're getting all torn up by going through these thorns in your life, when you very well could just go around them? There's something to be said about going through difficult times. Well, yeah, like Franco said, but avoid them if you can. You don't want to go through a thorn patch and get your legs all scarred up. Why? So that next time you choose to go through something you don't actually have to go through, you'll have some calluses on your legs. Your legs are still going to be ugly and bloody and shredded. Unless you want to just prove to yourself that you can go through these difficult things. Maybe there's some value in that, perhaps. But you can go around them. But that's all you need to know. You don't need to ask, why do these things happen? Why me? Why did this terrible thing happen to me? The answer to that question, it might be instructive. By the way, I'm going to point it out. It could be instructive. If you do something in life and it has negative consequences and you ask, why me? Oh, that's right, because I did this thing. So hopefully that will be instructive now. That's the punch that you're going to slip next time. You're not going to be standing there waiting for it to hit you, because you realize that this happened because I did this. So if I want my life to be different, I have to stop doing this and instead do something else. And then let that course of life happen. You know? It's like, you know, is it too late? Well, it's too late for the first time. It's not too late now. You know, as long as you're breathing, you can still change. I guess once you stop breathing, you've changed into something else, haven't you? So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yes.